Ominous, synth-heavy intro music fades in and then softens under the narration. You think you know his story. Julius Caesar. The conqueror, the dictator, the man who shaped an empire. And you've probably heard how he entered the world, in the most imperial way possible. Ripped from his mother's womb, a birth so extraordinary it was named after him, the Caesarean section. It's a powerful story. It makes perfect sense. But it's a lie. A lie so old, so deeply embedded in our culture, that we've mistaken it for fact. The truth is, much, much darker. Here's the first crack in the myth. Historical records are very clear. Caesar's mother, Aurelia Cotta, didn't die in childbirth. In fact, she lived for decades after he was born, serving as a close advisor to her powerful son. We have letters, records, she was very much alive. And why is that so important? Because in ancient Rome, the Caesarean section was not a procedure to save a mother and child. It was a post-mortem ritual. A last-ditch effort performed on a mother who was already dead, or dying, in the faint hope of saving the infant. The survival rate for the mother was 0. It wasn't surgery as we know it was a form of butchery, a desperate act on a corpse. For Caesar to have been born this way, his mother Aurelia would have had to die. But she didn't. So if the name doesn't come from Julius Caesar's birth, where does it come from? The answer lies not with a person, but with a law. A cold, pragmatic Roman law known as the Lex Caesarea. This law of Caesar, which likely predates Julius Caesar himself, decreed that any pregnant woman who died must be cut open. The baby had to be removed from the womb. This wasn't always about saving the child's life, it was often for religious reasons, to ensure the baby could be buried separately from its mother, granting it its own identity in the afterlife. The name, therefore, likely comes from the Latin verb cedere, which means to cut. The procedure was the cutting mandated by the Caesarean law. It had nothing to do with a triumphant birth and everything to do with a grim legal and religious obligation performed on the dead. But how did this grim origin story get twisted into a heroic tale about Julius Caesar? Through history's greatest game of telephone. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder wrote that one of Caesar's distant ancestors was the first to be cut from the womb, earning him the nickname Caeso. Over centuries, as stories were retold and texts were recopied, the tale of a long-forgotten ancestor named Caeso became conflated with his most famous descendant, Gaius Julius Caesar. The specific detail was lost, but the grand name remained. A simple mistake, a historical blur, created a myth that has lasted 2,000 years. Today, the Caesarean section is a miracle of modern medicine. A sterile, life-saving procedure that brings joy to millions of families. It has completely shed its dark and bloody origins. Music shifts back to a more ominous, thoughtful tone, but its name is a ghost. A whisper from a time when the procedure wasn't about celebrating new life, but about managing death. The name on the birth certificate isn't for an emperor born against all odds. It's for a Roman law that demanded a blade be taken to the dead, and for a history that got the story wrong. The truth, as always, was hiding in the dark.